Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you would kindly rise for the national anthem of St. Lucia. Thank you. And before we take our seats, I would like to invite Ms. Jallim Eudovic to lead us in the invocation.
Let's compose ourselves for prayer. O God and Creator, goodness and perfection flows from you. How great is the fullness and wonder. We come to you today seeking your blessings, not only for those of us present here, but for all persons we represent. Almighty God, in the abundance of your glory, enable us to grow firm in power with regard to our inner selves, so that we may live in our hearts through faith, and then, planted in love and built on love with all God's holy people, we will have the strength to grasp the length and the breadth, the height and the depth, so that, knowing the perfect love of God, which surpasses understanding, we may be filled with the utter fullness of you. We thank you for life. We thank you for the life of Anthony Norman Sabga, by whose generosity and inspiration the notion of the Caribbean Awards for Excellence has come to fruition. May he enjoy eternal rest. We pray the laureates whom you recognize and endow them, each of them, their co-workers and their respective families with grace and strength, so that their future work and witness be to the credit of their country and be to your glory. We make our prayer knowing that from you all things come, and to you all things shall return. This is our prayer. Amen.
I think we can now be seated. Thank you, Jallim. Jallim is the sister of our esteemed laureate designate this evening, and we will start with salutation. So, Your Excellency, Sir Neville, and Lady Snack, Your Excellency Emeritus, Governor General Emeritus, Dame Paulette Louisi, Madam President of the Senate, and also in your capacity as Chair of the Cultural Development Foundation, we recognize you. I must make a brief excuse for the Honorable Prime Minister, who may yet join us, but is detained for the time being. Honorable Senator Fortuna Belrose, welcome. We have also with us Dr. Charmaine Gardner and Professor Nigel Harris, Mr. Jallim Eudovic, Mrs. Eudovic. Master Lionel IC is missing, unfortunately, but the latest addition to the clan was expected. I don't know why he's not here. And family, friends, fond guests of our laureate designate, members of the media, fellow artists, Ms. Sigrid Nama, welcome, special guest of the laureate. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I certainly hope I have not left anyone out. It is a very special honor for me to be asked to be part of this milestone event here at Government House, where 10 years ago I was similarly celebrated as St. Lucia's first Caribbean laureate, in the same category of arts and letters as my dear friend and colleague Jallim Eudovic is being honored this evening. Before I call on our first speaker, please allow me to briefly say how proud we are of you, Jallim, not just this evening, but long before that, for your admirable body of work, which speaks so eloquently and so early in your career, which I hope will be a long and lasting and impactful one. We are confident that there are greater things to come. And on that note, I must highlight the fact that one of the most important criteria applied by the panel of distinguished persons who make these decisions is the likelihood that the laureate's work will impact and inspire other upcoming artists, that he would be a worthy exemplar and inspire hope and emulation. In this respect, let me say that we are not only hopeful, but we are confident. It is now my pleasure to introduce and welcome to the podium former chair of the OECS nominating committee and member of the eminent persons panel for the Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence, Dr. Charmaine Gardner. Dr. Gardner.
Good evening, Your Excellencies, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen. I believe protocols have been properly established, and so I would wish to associate my remarks with the opening salutations and would like to move swiftly along as our Master of Ceremonies has suggested. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are gathered here in Jallim Eudovic's honor at the invitation of the Anson McCall Foundation, which has been honoring Caribbean laureates for the last 14 years. The foundation was started 15 years ago, and the first award happened 14 years ago. A single award ceremony, typically every year, takes place in Trinidad or in some other regional capital. But these are not typical times, and imperatives of health and economics have forced themselves upon us in ways that cause us to be explorative and innovative. So here we are tonight, gathered in your esteemed company under the distinguished patronage of His Excellency the Governor General and Lady Snack, to whom we are extremely grateful. A more prestigious venue we could not have found. Ladies and gentlemen, the Anson McCall Foundation recognizes and rewards exceptional talent and achievement in 4 important categories: arts and letters, entrepreneurship, public and civic contribution, and science and technology. There can be little doubt that these categories broadly represent what is important in Caribbean society in terms of human aspiration and endeavor. But beyond that, they also represent fields of achievement which make us persistent, proud, and progressive, and which continue to lift us up as a people, with an eye on the future and an abiding respect for our treasury of established values and traditions. It is hardly a coincidence that the body of work of our 2020 laureate speaks so eloquently of such values, past, present, and future. And if any of us harbors even an iota of doubt, we need only look at his most recent public work entitled All In, now gracing the Castries waterfront at a spot where our city once ended in mud and mangrove, before its second life began as a hub of commerce, tourism, aviation, and government administration. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an understatement to simply say that we are proud of Jallim. We are more than proud. We are inspired and renewed, and as most would attest, inspiration and renewal are exactly what we need in our world today and in the uncertain future which lies ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Distinguished Caribbean colleagues everywhere, excellence will not be curbed, nor will its salutation by the necessary rules of safety that the pandemic imposes. And so, we are here today in a different fashion to acclaim the very best of the Caribbean in an area of homegrown achievement of that excellence, that nevertheless encompasses our entire region. 15 years ago, the Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence broke new ground in looking out across our wide region and identifying from within our civilization individuals who had attained a unique level of excellence in notable fields of endeavor. In arts and letters, in public and civic contributions, in science and technology, and more recently, in entrepreneurship. Caribbean folk came to be identified as achievers above the call of merit, beyond the lines of distinction. Achievers for whom only the sobriquet of excellence would suffice. By the high plane of philanthropy thus innovated, and which the trustees of the Ansa McCall Foundation have sustained, the Caribbean Awards for Excellence have generated a new level of regional aspiration. I salute the new chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Foundation, Mr. Andrew Sabga. And I salute too, in the name of the entire eminent persons panel, the model of philanthropic hands-off that he and his colleagues at Ansa McCall have been in relation to these awards. Excellence takes many forms, and the foundation is itself one of them. In so handsomely and with integrity, rewarding excellence, the awards have enhanced Caribbean levels of ambition and set higher the bar of regional accomplishment. In his immortal Gitanjali, Tagore wrote over a century ago of a world where knowledge is free, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where tireless striving stretches its arms toward perfection. It was a world of excellence. It is our world. The 2020 awards, as they salute and support excellence in our Caribbean, lift our collective sights to levels of performance we often miss or even fail to believe attainable in our region. They thus advance the superlative, excellence itself, as the mean for all our activities. The Caribbean Awards for Excellence not only honor individuals, but by demonstrating through them the worthiness that is within our countries, they multiply the vistas of excellence attainable to them. This year, we celebrate in the homeland of each of our awardees their outstanding achievement. And you, our viewing audience, are all with our celebrant and our celebrant with you. That is as it should be, for tonight is an occasion of Caribbean excellence. I invite you all to share with us the joy of the conferment of the Caribbean Award for Excellence 2020.
Our distinguished laureates and their families, members of our regional panel of eminent persons, other guests, welcome to our 2020 awards ceremony. If a year ago someone told me that I would be addressing you via this medium, we would all be in disbelief. But the global pandemic has pushed us into a new normal, and therefore I must address you by this means rather than in person. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Amidst the push into the digital technology and the reorganization of our businesses, social life, and economic activity, a few things of our past remain of premium importance. Some of these things are ingenuity, innovation, entrepreneurship. Even without technology that we are using at this moment, these are the human qualities that deliver us into a new, better world. And these are the very things that our founder, Dr. Anthony N. Sabga, valued above all else. So it is fitting that these awards remain his legacy to the region and to the world, that the Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence seeks out the knowledge and the skills so necessary for human, social, and economic growth, and makes the knowledge available to all. So now, more than ever, as our laureates, past and present, are leading the way to alternative energy, medical science and entrepreneurship, and social intervention to help the less fortunate, our 2020 laureates magnificently provide us with the best examples of what we can do to solve our problems from within. Mr. Andrew Menz, our entrepreneurship laureate from Guyana, has transformed the logging industry, but he's also diversified from farming, alternative energy, and traditional energy. Dr. Shireen Hack, our science laureate from Trinidad and Tobago, adds the second woman to this category. Dr. Hack's field is astronomy, but she will explain to you the science used to gaze into the stars is of utmost importance here to us on Earth. Our laureate in civic contributions, Dr. Olivine Burke from Jamaica, as head of UWI Mona Social Services, has made remarkable and transformative interventions in Jamaica's most depressed communities. She has transformed lives, rejuvenated whole communities, and brought education and opportunity where there was none. And our final laureate, Mr. Jallim Eudovic of St. Lucia, is a sculptor whose work speaks to our present, past, and future of these islands. As always, the selection of these laureates is thanks to our hard-working and dedicated community nominating committees and the deliberation of our regional eminence panel. These exemplary people are the inner machinery of our awards, and I thank them. I congratulate our laureates in their respective territories, and I am confident that our laureates will be at the forefront of those leading our people out of the crisis into a better future. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with greatest pleasure that I now read to you the official citation in respect of this 2020 Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Award for Excellence in Arts and Letters, followed by the laureate video. think I should say, hear ye, hear ye. The Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Award for Excellence in Arts and Letters is presented to Mr. Jallim Eudovic of St. Lucia for his achievements in the field of sculpture in St. Lucia, in the OECS, and indeed throughout the world. The OECS nominating committee and the Regional Eminent Persons panel are impressed that someone of this relatively young age, in the person of Mr. Eudovic, would have made such an impact on communities as diverse as municipalities in China, art galleries and critics in the UK and the US, and his native St. Lucia. The ability to do this, they conclude, is a testament to both the force of the region's potential to create and the individual talent embodied in Mr. Eudovic. The OECS committee recognizes that while this talent manifests in a single person, Mr. Eudovic's life makes it clear that it accumulates slowly in communities, and bits of inspiration and genius passed on painstakingly over generations and coalesces when circumstances and conditions allow. So it is Mr. Eudovic, whose inspiration was his father, also a sculptor, has come to speak the visual language of his community. But the committee and panel also acknowledge this local knowledge is not merely local. Mr. Eudovic's ability to fashion blocks of wood into compelling shapes and forms has captured the imaginations of artists, civic officials, and cultural authorities in China, where he has been commissioned to create public monuments in the cities of Shangzhou and Fuzhou. His series of works, Kudme, based on a local tradition of communal caring, have struck chords in galleries in the US, UK, and regionally at the Carifesta exhibitions. In addition to creating works of art, the committee and panel are also impressed that Mr. Eudovic follows his father's example and mentors young artists in his native St. Lucia. He has also become one of the voices in contemporary art discourse, which represent the Caribbean in international fora. This voice speaks of the spiritual potential of his home community and the deep wellsprings of compassion and care in the human spirit. For his talent, for his deep compassion in sharing his gifts, and his being a voice for Caribbean arts and Caribbean civilization, the Regional Eminent Persons panel has deemed Mr. Jallim Eudovic of St. Lucia to be worthy of the accolade of Laureate in Arts and Letters of the Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence for 2020. Dated St. Lucia, October 15, 2020. And now, as they say at the awards, the video, please.
The Caribbean today is preoccupied with issues of economics, science, and politics. But there's another sphere of life just as important: the spirit of the bodies inside the machines. This is the sphere inhabited by Jallim Eudovic, a sculptor from St. Lucia who, it seems, was born for this work. His father, Kenneth, was also an artist of some renown.
I was brought up in an art studio, but I was totally unaware of this until I was about 5 years old. But prior to my awareness of my surroundings and so on, I was always very, very fascinated with nature, puddles of water, wood grain, just about everything. I was that daydreaming kid.
His talent blossomed from an early age, and by young adulthood he had begun to make an impression on his national community. But his growth entered a new phase when he began to travel.
When I left St. Mary's College in 1999, I had an option to go to university, college, or to stay with my father. And my father was already probably approaching his 60s, by that time. And he being such a brilliant artist, I decided to stay with him for like a few years and to learn from the master himself. I immediately started to take part in some of the biggest exhibitions in St. Lucia, and that sort of put me on the local radar. The island and the powers that be began to recognize my talents, and I began to travel as an ambassador of St. Lucia, representing St. Lucia at various art exhibitions around the world.
His experiences in Niger, Africa, one of the poorest nations in the world, transformed him.
We went to Niger, Africa, the most impoverished country in Africa. So before we went, the entire delegation was inoculated. Africa, the perception is, there is festering disease and there is rampant poverty and that kind of thing. And what I found there was absolute unbridled creativity. Without apology and without excuse, of people who had very little resources creating out of nothing. That's where I sort of broke away from my dad's style.
The work he produced in the aftermath established him as a serious artist.
He's become famous, let's not fool ourselves. He's well known as far as China. Much of his work is there, in UK, in the US, in the Caribbean, his work is known.
My art reflects my community and the aspirations of my community. I mean, my international diasporic community as a black man in the world, as a Caribbean man in the world, as a multicultural man as well, because as Caribbean people we are all these things.
Jallim's work participates in global discussions about race, the future and technology. He was invited to show at the Stephen Lawrence Gallery in the UK, and he contributed a series of works called Coup de Main.
Coup de Main, it's about people helping, it's helping hands, people lending their talents and the skills and the labor to improve the life of a neighbor. So it happens one by one. It's the philosophy of all for one.
So his work speaks to the local and the global with one voice. His impact on his home community, though, has been considerable.
For us, he's well renowned in the international arena. In terms of the local citizens, last year we celebrated our 40th anniversary of independence. And Jallim was the one who really captured the essence of our independence celebrations for us in sculpture, in a monument, depicting our theme, All In. It was just testimony, to the quality of work that he does internationally and from whence he came.
What I admire about his work, again, he's a thinking artist. He did this monument, which is now in downtown Castries. The original name was Boat of Dreams, which I prefer. It's now called All In. But again, you look at the vision encapsulated as he imagined the first fathers coming to these islands and his whole structuring of the piece. I find that unique.
Jallim's recognition for these achievements has been a source of pride locally, but he has also created opportunities for service.
Being a child of the independence era for us, because he was born in 1980, St. Lucia attained independence in 1979. And so for us, it was a real great gift, to our country, that a man who was born, after the independence era was able to leave a monument behind that captures the essence of who we are, whence we came, and causes us to reflect, most of the times, as well as look ahead in terms of where we want to go and ensuring that as a nation together, we can achieve the success that we want.
We are at a stage in our socioeconomic political development where we need people who make us question, who make us wonder, who make us contemplate, and cause us to question the status quo, because largely the status quo is not of our making, and if it's not of our making, then it is of someone else's making. When Jallim Eudovic creates a sculpture, as he has for the 40th anniversary of St. Lucia's independence, at least in my mind, he is causing us to ask those very questions.
For these reasons, Jallim Eudovic of St. Lucia is the Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence Laureate in Arts and Letters for 2020.
And now the moment we've been waiting for. Ms. Dr. Gardner, if you would join me. And Your Excellency, if you would be so kind to come forward. You are not Your Excellency yet, you know. This Excellency. Your Excellency, if you'd be so kind to come to this. And Laureate Eudovic, if you would be so kind. Thank you. And Madam, take over, and then Professor, go ahead. I will move.
Well, Dr. Gardner, having already spoken before me, I now present you this wonderful gift on behalf of the people of St. Lucia. Thank you. Very much.
Your Excellency, if you present the scroll.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
You know, it's all yours. Everything is yours. You know, a scroll is a very important thing. A scroll, you know, the whole Bible, you have to dig to get a thing like that. You know.
Thank
Wow.
you very much.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I could put it there.
I hope you will notice that my hand did not shake when I was, despite my age.
They might be shaking a while.
They never shake.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have the acceptance speech from our laureate 2020 for Arts and Letters, Mr. Jallim Eudovic. Sir, the microphone is yours. And the moment.
Your Excellency, Sir Neville and Lady Snack, Your Excellency, Dame Paulette Louise, Madam President of the Senate and Chair of the Cultural Development Foundation, Honorable Prime Minister, who is could be here anytime, and Mrs. Shasti, Honorable Senator Fortuna Barrows, Minister of Culture, Dr. Charmaine Gardiner, and Professor Nigel Harris, members of the Answer Foundation Eminent Persons Panel, my parents, my dear wife, my son, Master Lionel, who, to answer Adrian's question about his whereabouts, has taken ill, but he's doing well. He's recovering nicely, and he's with his nanny tonight, so we didn't abandon him. Family, friends, Miss Sigrid Nama, foreign guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. One of my earliest memories is lying in bed, staring up at the wood grain patterns of our bedroom ceiling, and being fully immersed in the richness of its abstract forms. For me, that bedroom ceiling was the roof of a world big enough to accommodate 2 adjoining beds, which slept 4 brothers and 2 sisters. That ceiling was my portal into another dimension, a dimension made infinite by the unwritten laws of pure imagination. The other side of that ceiling was the floor of my parents' souvenir shop, one of half a dozen structures which constituted our village, our little family village, and the cluster of our fledgling family business. Years later, I recognized that the ceiling under which I dreamt was the floor on which my parents realized their own dreams. This powerful symbolism, this duality, this irony of ceiling versus foundation has stuck with me my entire life. Meanwhile, my father, a venerable sculptor, had for years traversed the length and breadth of the St. Lucian space like a messiah, spreading the gospel of art. He had returned complete with afro and dashiki from his pilgrimage to Nigeria, where he studied contemporary and traditional sculpture. But most significantly, he was charged with an undeniable determination to bring change to his society. He embraced many who had been relegated to the scrap heap of development, young men and women who knew the angst of a colonial St. Lucia, who had been chewed up and spat out by an apathetic system. My father sought them out, went into the enclaves, redeemed them from destitution. He taught them how to breathe life into dead roots and stumps of wood, which lay comatose on forest floors, awaiting the flowering of the very talent he foresaw. He knew then, as I know now, that if you teach people to transform inanimate objects into statements of beauty and refinement, those same people will find in that process their own transformation paths. He believed this not as some esoteric theory, but his own life story. You see, he had moved to oil-rich Trinidad at the age of 16 and was the fortunate apprentice to the famed Trinidadian sculptor Ricardo Vincenti. 11 years later, he returned home to train scores of young artisans and craftsmen, particularly in the southern community of Choiseul, St. Lucia's mecca of traditional art and craft. He was subsequently contracted by the government of the day to teach young men and women of that community to discover and explore their creativity beyond the utilitarian customs of traditional pottery and straw. He inspired them to make broader statements of self and identity. Whether he intended it or not, my father built an ark that will soon include my mother, his life partner, my siblings and I, the youngest of the Eudovic siblings. He was building an ark to carry his family and his business across the flat horizon of agriculture and into the dawning days of tourism. Like my siblings before me, I was hoisted at the age of 5 onto a high stool at my father's workbench, my short legs barely reaching the highest rung. There I was introduced to sculpture and had to earn my respect of older siblings and a cohort of unrelated apprentices. There was no favor. Under my father's austere tutelage, everyone was treated equally. It was a competitive environment, and we all battled for supremacy. The studio was also an epicenter for creative masters, and giants like Sir Derek Walcott and Leroy Clark of Trinidad, when they visited, had a seismic effect on me as a constant reminder of excellence awaiting to be attained. Upon leaving St. Mary's College, the alma mater of Nobel laureates Sir Arthur Lewis and Sir Derek Walcott, and must I add, St. Lucia's first laureate, Dr. Adrian Auger, I decided that I wanted to become a relevant voice in the art world. I immediately realized that I had to emerge from my father's shadow, carve out my own path, and chart my own course. Seized with that ambition, I did all I could to attain exposure. I took part in local, regional, and international exhibitions. I worked tirelessly, burnt the midnight oil, and my candle at both ends. I needed to succeed as much as I needed to breathe, and quite often suffered from headaches and acid reflux. Thankfully, my efforts did not go unrecognized, and I soon found myself in places as far-flung as Africa, Europe, Canada, and China. I went on to create monuments for several cities across China, and at here home, I have become something of a sought-after artist. All this, I believe, because I was raised by a village. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we are all shaped by our early experiences and by the influence of others in our lives. And while I am thankful for my journey, I am also painfully aware that too many across the region, the development of our creatives is stymied by a persistent lack of resources and support. Many less fortunate do not see any reward in cultivating their creative talents, so they settle for the mundane, and ultimately deprive society of the gifts. We are all the poorer for that deprivation, such that our region is afflicted by a maddening mentality which deems things valuable only when they contribute to GDP, only when the contribution, to GDP can be measured in US dollars or EC cents. Against this myopia, artists are seen as mendicants, charity cases, and to be humored and patronized. We have failed in too many ways to create environments conducive to. Like the inverse ceiling of my youth, artistic thought, expression, and creativity are the true foundations of our collective humanity. The nutrients which feed our souls and alone have the power to curb the violence of self-deprecation, to redress the social and economic dysfunction which plagues us all. The power of artists is neither decorative or superficial. Artists hold the DNA of our spirit, the genome of our race, the mirror of our circumstance. They are transformative guardians at the portal of imagination, staring up at the infinite possibilities beyond wooden ceilings. All civilization is built on the invaluable contributions of creatives. Everything man has been designed. The artist deals with issues of need and necessity as much as identity, self-actualization, and self-rejection. The artist documents and celebrates the most important aspects of who we are, limited only by the scope of our imagination and the breadth of our dreams. We catalyze the renewal of perspective, perception, color, form, shape, and rhythm, so that all may learn to see new possibilities under our private ceilings, beyond our public hindrances. As Caribbean people, the next phase of our societal evolution depends heavily on critical and creative thought and practice. American President John Quincy Adams highlighted the importance of these immemorable words in his immemorable words. I have to study politics and war so that my sons can study mathematics and agriculture, so that their sons can study poetry, painting, statuary, and music. This is why these Anthony N. Sabga Caribbean Awards for Excellence are so important to us all. They represent a huge vote of confidence and commitment, otherwise unavailable within our community. They also affirm that excellence will be rewarded and liberate us all from the crippling mindset that validation comes from someone other than ourselves. Our people are majestic. Only a few centuries old, we have contributed beyond our size to the global past, present, and future. So it is extremely commendable that a Caribbean private sector entity has seen fit to recognize the efforts of exemplary Caribbean citizens. I am honored to be considered amongst that number, and take this opportunity to thank the Ansa Macal Foundation for its ongoing commitment to Caribbean development. With its generous monetary prize, this award comes at a most opportune time and will help support our craft development and retail company, aptly named Papa Bois. This venture aims at developing, marketing, and exporting indigenous clay straw and woodcraft items to global markets. I have decided to focus almost exclusively on the dying indigenous art forms from the community of Choiseul in an effort to rescue our cottage industry via a series of interventions which share knowledge and restore standards. This will ultimately increase product value and ensure long-term sustainability. Choiseul, by the way, is the very same community to which my father returned in his youth. And as you can tell by now, I am honored to walk in his footsteps. I am also working on developing an international art residency in St. Lucia, which will receive local, regional, and international artists. The primary focus is to give promising and established artists, writers, poets, and playwrights a serene space to create their best work. These creatives will also be asked to contribute by way of mentoring and training our young, budding artists. I have not quite come full circle, not in my work, nor in its less than brief address. But I have grown to realize that the shadow of my father was never really a shadow at all. It was the shade of a generous flamboyant in the middle of a fertile savanna. Clearly, our destinies are entwined, and like him, my future work will also be devoted to impacting the lives of others. I no longer free from it, but will return and rest there a while before pushing on to the next astounding height. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you, Laureate Eudovic, and welcome to the fraternity. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor of inviting Professor Nigel Harris, member of the Eminent Persons panel, to deliver closing remarks. Professor Harris, thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of bringing this event to a happy close. I first want to thank all of you who have braved the onslaught of the COVID epidemic to come to share this special evening at which we are celebrating the achievement of an exceptional young man. I have just heard his presentation, and I feel it's simply inspirational. As you've heard, I've had the good fortune of belonging to the Eminent Persons panel, along with, of course, the indomitable Dr. Charmaine Gardner. And that Eminent Persons panel makes the final selection of the winners for the SABCO Caribbean Awards of Excellence. Candidates for the final award are first selected by 5 nominating committees. The committees come from the OECS, Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad, and Tobago. The OECS is special because any successful laureate from the OECS must compete twice. They have to compete against similar persons in the OECS, and then once selected, they then must compete against those from the other 4 countries. As we've heard, the awards are in 4 categories: arts and letters, science and technology, public and civic contributions, and entrepreneurship. I should point out that there is no guarantee that an award for a given category would be given each year. If the committee believes that in a given year there's no one who measures up to excellence in the given area, then no award is given. I have followed these awards since I was Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies in 2005. And I regard them in many ways as the Caribbean Nobel Prize. I know that St. Lucia is special in Nobel Prizes, special in the world, in honoring and celebrating their Nobel Prize winners. But I feel that in much the same manner, it is fitting that we celebrate this son of St. Lucian soil, whose art is global, both in its reach and in the accolades it has received. In places like China, Africa, and so on. It's simply amazing. And of course, I want to say that as you have 2 Nobel Prize winners, we have 2 laureates, SABGA laureates, and of course, again, our 2010 laureate, Senator Adrian Auger, who we celebrate too. Both as a Caribbean citizen and as an adopted St. Lucian, and I should say I am a St. Lucian citizen now, please allow me to express my own respect and admiration for our 2020 laureate, Jallim Eudovic, and to encourage him, and I think he needs no encouragement, to keep adding to his already significant body of work. Let me now return to the core of my duties this evening, pleasant task of thanking those of you who have made this evening possible. Your Excellency Sir Neville and Lady Sinak, for your distinguished patronage of the ceremony and the elegance of your official residence. Your Excellency Dame Pearlett Louise, Governor General Emerita, for your continued presence and participation in the intellectual and artistic life of our nation. Madam President of the Senate, for your distinguished presence and your service as Chair of the Cultural Development Foundation. I know that our laureate also welcomes your perspectives on matters of creativity and culture. To our Honorable Senator Fortuna Belrose, who we saw here, Minister of Culture, to you, thank you so much for coming and for your really very thoughtful remarks, with regard to Mr. Eudovic and of course with regard to art and creativity in St. Lucia. Of course, to Dr. Charmaine Gardner, who's been a champion of these awards and a fierce advocate for the OECS committee, who continues to hold their own, these are the OECS, in the face of many nominations from other territories. I think, although acknowledged, that we must again thank the SABGA family, who were inspired by the exceptional vision and generosity of the late Dr. Anthony N. Sabga to make these awards possible in the first place. And one doesn't want to talk finance, but it is indeed quite a magnificent gift in Caribbean terms. I thank Mr. A. Norman Sabga, who remains principal patron of the Ansa McCall Foundation, and Mr. Andrew Sabga, who is the current chairman of the foundation. Our thanks to Mrs. Maria Nielsen, who isn't here, but she is really the energetic CEO of the foundation, and her dedicated, and she has a dedicated staff who really play a big role in the selection process and the award ceremony. I think you all should be members of the selection committee. It's amazing the number of really talented candidates and hearing about them and in fact the difficulty of deciding who to choose for this special honor. I want to thank finally our supporting cast and crew, Landmark Events, UGTV, Island Sounds, and the staff of the official residence. We say a resounding thank you. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, and especially members of the Eudovic family, thanks for being here to mark this life-changing moment with Jallim, for standing by him. And he was so magnificent in his description of the degree to which you did, standing by him when all we know that this can be a precarious livelihood as far as the creative arts are concerned. And I think Jallim described that really, really beautifully. I want to close by asking everyone to stand and give a resounding round of applause for Jallim, for St. Lucia, for the magnificence of Caribbean creativity and culture.